So, Russell, delighted to be here with you today to talk about digital transformation and how it's affecting the oil and gas sector. Tell me from your point of view, what are the major trends, obsessions, concerns, and opportunities out there?
Okay, well, good morning, Martin. Delighted to be here with you. It's a great question, and it's a question that we get asked a lot. OSIsoft is right in the center of all these kind of conversations. We've been working with many oil and gas companies for over 20 years, and we've been helping them sort of collect data and do things with data. So in some ways, the idea of why is everyone suddenly very interested in this is kind of strange, because the oil industry has been collecting data and doing things with data for a long time. But there's no doubt that things are changing now. The workforce is far more motivated about doing things with technology. They are recognizing that no longer are these just things that maybe are talked about in trade shows or events that might happen one day in the future. I think operational people that we talk with on a daily basis are now proactively seeking out opportunities with technology. They're looking at all the data they've been collecting for long periods of time and asking what can they do with it. They're looking at the kind of value opportunities with all this information, and they're looking at the sort of technology that we're involved with, the data, the analytics, the real-time surveillance, the automation of things going on in their workplace to enhance the way they're operating. So there's a lot of interest in that kind of stuff. I think specifically from our perspective, there's a few things going on. The first thing is that there is a lot more data than there ever has been before. Traditionally, we would have been involved with collecting data from production processes, producing wells, parts of a refinery, industrial processes, quantities of hydrocarbon within storage containers and this kind of stuff. Now everybody is increasingly interested in collecting much more data from across their oil field, not just producing wells, but everything that may be going on in their environment. Where are people? Where are vehicles? Where are robotics? Where are drones? What's going on at every aspect of their operation? People are looking to add sensors and collect data from that way. I think the second thing is that people are much more interested in using this data far more broadly across their entire operation. So again, traditionally, we would have been involved in the kind of the production surveillance side of things, process optimizations. But now everybody is increasingly interested in areas such as maintenance, health and safety, asset integrity, remote operations. In the case of upstream, things like real-time drilling. So people want to use this data far more broadly than they ever have. And I think the third thing that's going on is there are these sort of emerging technology trends, or in some ways not even emerging anymore, sort of well-established technology trends, the real-time analytics, the integrated operations, the IoT, the cloud technology, that people are very interested in the industry. There's lots of questions going on around how can we take these technologies and apply them to our traditional real-time data environments to get value. And there's no doubt there is a huge amount of value to be realized if done properly.
So the picture you're painting there very nicely suggests that oil and gas is pretty well advanced, would you say, versus peers and other sectors maybe?
In some cases, I would say yes. I think in other cases, the answer to that is no. I mean, the oil and gas industry traditionally operates in very hazardous environments. Their assets are extremely, high value assets, and operations companies are understandably very cautious about the implementation of new technology. So generally, the industry, I would say, is more known for being fast followers when it comes to innovation around technology than sort of leading the way. So yes, there are definitely a lot of projects. There's a lot of activity around exploring the value that can be done with this technology. And we are absolutely seeing real cases every day of really exciting implementations of advanced real-time technology in the workforce. But I think it would be false to say that the whole industry is really advanced when it comes to its use of technology. There are still many of our customers who are working with spreadsheets and pieces of paper. There's still an awful lot of manual processes in the industry. It's kind of weird because you look at these amazing industrial assets and all the sophistication that's in them, and you sort of just assume that will go alongside with really amazing implementations of technology. And in many cases, that is true, but in many cases, it's not true. And there are huge opportunities for the industry to embrace digitalization further and to mature with its mature with getting value from these kind of initiatives. I think a lot of the industry has been collecting data for a long time, and many of our customers have got huge databases of operational industrial data that they've collected for 10, 15 years plus. And now the real challenge is how do we approach those huge data sets and start extracting value in the same way that we extract value from an oil field or from producing a refinery or something.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think there is this situation where a lot of companies are collecting data because they're being told data is really important. But if you don't do anything with it, all it is a great big sort of fatberg of data. You're paying a lot of money for storage, you're paying a lot of money to process it, but often you're not doing too much with it. And it seems to me that if we do use this term data is the new oil, then oil has to be refined, and you have to do a lot of clever things in order to really get the value from the resource. And I think it's the same with data. Unless you manage it, unless you ensure that it's not stored in silos, if it's not integrated, if it's not in different formats and versions where you can't reconcile data islands, then it becomes effectively valueless. In fact, it becomes a negative because that data could be hold intellectual property, could hold a lot of personal or business data that you really don't want to get out there. So unless you're really putting those controls around it, then it's not ideal.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think there are a huge amount of challenges, and I think the challenges in the industry right now are not around data collection. They're not around implementing sensors on pieces of equipment. They're not around the performance of computers that we have that can analyze this data and do things with it. I think a lot of the challenges are exactly as you say. They are, how do we take all that time series operational data in its raw format and introduce meaning to that data, turn it from just a term that's used a lot, a source of data, into something that's really a source of insight or information that enables operations teams to be able to take that data and quickly use it to make the right decisions at the right time to get the right operational results. I think a lot of the challenges we see are around that. It's around data integration. It's around how do I take all this data and blend it with other data that I'm collecting or I'm generating in my operation and bring this all together in a meaningful way that my operations teams can do good stuff with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other term we hear a lot at the moment is big data, the ability to interrogate vast data sets. And as you said, so many new sources of data entering the enterprise. I suppose that the challenge is twofold. One of them is to ensure, as you said, you mentioned earlier, health and safety, data governance, regulatory compliance, etc. And then the other half of the left-right punch combination is insights that you mentioned. How do you get that data to do stuff better, to be able to make business decisions that are going to really drive revenue, drive efficiency, drive profitability, and so on? And do you see it that way, that there's a mixture of the defensive and the attacking in terms of what you do with the data?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, data security is rightly a concern in the industry at the moment. I mean, we're fortunate enough to be working with the majority of the industry in upstream, midstream, and downstream, and we see these challenges and concerns around cybersecurity from all industries. Luckily, I think the ways of solving this in an industrial environment are maturing well, and a lot of those challenges are now being met. But there's another set of concerns or challenges, exactly as you say, around, okay, once I've safely collected all this data, how can I start using it in a meaningful way? You started the question talking about big data, and I think when we talk to people about the kind of quantities of data we're talking about, people soon realize that we are talking about massive data sets. If we look at the whole oil and gas industry as a whole at the moment, we as a company are currently managing, or our technology is being used to manage around 500 million streams of real-time data. Often that data is arriving every 1 second or under 1 second intervals. And in many cases, customers are collecting this data for 10, 15, 20 years periods. So you can quickly do the maths with a calculator, I guess, and come up with some enormous data sets, petabytes of data that our customers are working with. So how do you take those huge data sets and be able to process them in a way that people can then approach them in a useful way and quickly extract value and information? And that's definitely a big challenge. The other challenge for us is also the sheer volume and velocity that data hits through some of our technology. We've got customers like Shell who are reporting, up to 10 trillion read and writes of their Pi system every month. If you can imagine that amount of activity going on in their real-time data infrastructure, any kind of analytics, any kind of processing that they do on that data needs to be extremely high performance to be able to simply keep up with the flow of data coming through it. So there's a lot of big challenges and there's a lot of big questions being asked in the industry at the moment about not just what are we going to do with this data, but technically how are we going to solve these problems. It makes it a very, very exciting thing to be involved with.